8 a.m. gathering, 9 o'clock event. Um, and some of you drove. Bless your hearts for being here. Um, so today we're going to be talking about um, keeping the faith in an environment that is sort of directed against the ways that we even think about how we know anything at all. Um, there's a big word called epistemology. You guys have probably heard that big word. I love words. I don't know. I love words. But that word basically just is how philosophers ask and answer the question, or attempt to answer the question, how do I know anything at all? And there's this sense that Christianity has been answering that question for 2,000 years in a certain way. And there's ways that the way we've answered the question has been a little different from the way that the world has answered the question. So hopefully we'll get to talk about some of that today. And sort of, this is to lay a little foundation for some of the things that are going to continue to go on, and maybe play a little bit off of what Ken Sample said last night with regard to worldview. I had an outline that I was going to work from, but I'm going to work from my slides because I was unable to print out my outline. So I'm going to wing this a little. Hey, he said that, I could do a little song and dance band thing up here, right? I've got sunshine on a cloudy day. So keeping the faith, the foundations of knowledge. The foundations of knowledge. So this is a quote from Rowan Williams. He is the Archbishop, or was formerly the Archbishop of Canterbury. That is the number 2 dude in the Anglican communion of churches. That just means the Church of England. And, in the Church of England, well, the Queen is the defender of the faith, right? and then under that you've got the Archbishop and then some bishops under that. Some of you actually might have read a dude, N.T. Wright. Have you read N.T. Wright? Anybody? Some people have read N.T. Wright. He used to be the Bishop of Durham, who's like the number 3 or 4 dude in the Anglican communion. So this is what Rowan Williams said. He said, sometimes when you're engaging with people, you do realize that we're speaking a different language. This is why it is important to stress that the language of faith is not an outlier, but is an important part of knowing. This is key. I want you to notice that Rowan Williams, who's a brilliant man, by the way, whatever you think of his theology, he's a brilliant dude. And he is very keen on this point. He's setting up a little dialogue here between a couple of different schools of knowing about stuff, right? So he's saying, look, first we have this way of knowing and this way of knowing, or this account of how we know things and this account of how we know things. And then they also have to dialogue because we're in the world. We're sent into the world to talk to people and minister to people. We're sent into the world to proclaim the gospel. So we have to cross that barrier. So there's a couple of different aspects here that we need to get very clear on. One is, how do we know anything at all? And then how do they say we know anything at all? And then how do I talk to them? And that are really the 3 areas that I'm going to be discussing today.
Can I ask a question before you go on? Outlier. That's a new word for me.
Thank you so much. Outlier. It just means something that's sort of foreign to the idea of thinking. Think of something that's outside of an area of expertise or outside of a discipline. An outlier would be something like that. Okay. Now, some of this might be just a tad hard to see. And that's on purpose. I know. Like, this is one of the critiques of my PowerPoint is that sometimes I obscure things for reasons. But this is the Collins Dictionary definition of the word faith. And I've highlighted a few things there that I want you to take note of, because I want you to start acclimating yourselves as Christians to the way that people think about and talk about faith. What we mean by faith when we say it is not the same thing as what they mean by faith when they say it. Okay. Notice, without proof or evidence. That's incredibly important to their conception of faith, especially as we start listening to people in the news. And even Christians, because we are trying to communicate with people with where they come from, we'll talk about people who are atheists maybe having faith commitments with regard to science or things like this. And even then, we kind of mean they have to sort of believe things that are beyond evidence first. And so that aspect of without proof is very important to this way of talking about what faith is. It's specifically religious when you say faith, especially Christianity in our way of talking. Especially when this is not based on reason. Super heavy. Now, understand that a dictionary is a history book. A dictionary is, the keeper of reference is a historian who looks at current usage of terms and what is meant by those terms. So this is why dictionary definitions change, right? Lots of people are like, what you call a prescriptionist. They look at a dictionary and they say, well, this is how the word has always ever been used and how we must absolutely use it, but that's not actually what a dictionary is. It is a historical document of how things are used. Now, this is a Bible dictionary. Now, a Bible dictionary, it gathers its definitions of terms and ideas from the text of Scripture. And I want you to note the highlighted words. True. Trust. Full assurance. In accordance with the evidence. Teaching, knowledge, facts. These are the kinds of things we talk about when we talk about faith. We say that faith is a kind of knowledge. You remember the Rowan Williams quote? He was saying, I know this can be a little confusing because we're using same words in different ways, but we got to start to negotiate this difference, my friends. This is a very key difference. Well, I want you to notice that in some of the, maybe if you squint, you can see that in some of those, each of these little definitions and sentences in the definition gives you a scripture reference, right? It's called a proof text. Proof texts are given in documents that refer back to Scripture to say where we got that sentence from, where we got that idea from. Here's a little evidence that what we're saying about the way the Bible is talking about these things is actually the way the Bible is talking about these things. So, faith. We talk about the faith. The faith. Have you guys heard this? Because our conference is called Keeping the Faith. Keeping the faith. The faith is the body of knowledge that we have inherited as Christians. The body of knowledge. So not only do we have a system of knowledge, which we'll talk about in a moment, but we have an entire body of knowledge. We stand on the shoulders of giants. Beginning first and foremost with the revelation of God himself, both in nature and in Scripture. God is a God who reveals himself. And this becomes not just the foundation for our religious things, but our foundation for knowing anything at all, including ourselves. We have a naive notion that we sort of begin with ourselves. There was a guy, his name was René Descartes. René Descartes. He was a philosopher. You can tell he's French. You've probably seen his name. Descartes is the way he spells his name. Oh, those French in their silent letters. René Descartes. Now, he started with this discipline of rigorous doubt. He took a long weekend, and he said, I'm going to doubt everything that I can doubt. I doubt that I see my hands in front. I doubt that I have two hands, because there could be a demon out there with incredible power that's able to make me have two-hand illusions. Right? I'm going to doubt everything. And he goes through this discipline of doubt until he could get down to what he would think of as a foundation for knowledge. A foundation. Indubitable thing, I love that word, the undoubtable thing that he could say, look, this thing I don't doubt, and then I can build on the undoubted thing and try and get back up to knowledge of other things. So what does he say? He says, I cannot doubt that I'm the one doubting. You probably guys have heard this. I think, therefore I am. So he begins with, I think, therefore I am. This becomes his foundation of knowledge. And he goes further and then tries, I think, with some degree of success, to maybe build back up towards knowing other things. But what do we say as Christians to that? That's, he's not who I would classify as a non-Christian thinker, but he is beginning where? With self. He begins with himself. But what do we say? Where do we begin? In the beginning, we know God first, and then we know we ain't him. Right? We begin with God, and then we reflect upon who we are in that relationship. Knowledge begins with God. So even in this definition, this is from, by the way, Easton's Bible Dictionary. This is from 1897. So this is not new. We're not responding to the idea of faith as an irrational belief by saying, well, no, there's a way we can think about this as a rational belief. No. This is our idea from the beginning. This goes back to the apostles. Faith is a comprehensive system of knowledge, a system. Now, notice Descartes' system began with himself, and then he built upon that. Now, I know that not everyone here is a Presbyterian, but in the Presbyterian Confession of Faith, we begin with the Bible. It's the very first article is talking about the Bible. And it says that the propositions that are in the Bible, propositions are just sentences, the things, the truths, the facts that are in the Bible, and then the things that we can logically deduce from the Bible constitute what we believe are true, constitute knowledge. So a couple of things are sort of presupposed there. Presuppositions are things that we begin with that we don't prove. We don't prove a presupposition. But they're things that we begin with in order to know other things. So as a comprehensive system of knowledge, we have to have a starting place. talking a little bit about a couple of different systems of knowing within Christianity. But at least this much we know to be true. You got to start somewhere. You have to start somewhere. Think about mathematics. How do we start in mathematics? Anybody remember like in the 8th grade and you had to figure out triangles and stuff? Okay, everybody's trying to suppress those memories. All that pain. I understand. Where did you begin? Didn't you begin with an axiom? You guys remember that word, an axiom? You had a math axiom. You began with a statement, something like the shortest distance, a straight line. Prove to me that the shortest between 2 points is a straight line. How are you going to go about proving that? How many? How long is your life? Oh yeah, maybe 80 and 100 years between earth and sky. Yeah, you could spend every waking hour of your days measuring distances between straight lines and never come close to exhausting the possibilities. So why do we choose a straight line as the shortest distance? Because it seems self-evident. Self-evident. Now, lots of Christian thinkers have something like this idea. Something like this idea. Christian thinkers have said things like, belief in God is a properly basic belief.